Today's video, we're gonna do a dog collar for our dog Pippi. I occasionally make dog collars for customers. We're gonna walk you through the process of measuring, fitting, and then I'll show you me tooling it, stamping it, and doing all the finish work on it. All right, come here, sweetie. Come here. Here you go. Sit down. Sit. As you can tell, this is a dog who doesn't spend a lot of time in a collar out here in the country. But let me show you how to measure it. There's two ways you can do it. You can take an existing dog collar, let's just say this is it, and you can measure from the end of the buckle to the hole used, and that'll give you the length of that collar. That's one way to do it. Then the other way to do it is to just loosely fit it around kind of the base of the neck and give yourself the full measurement. And in her case, it's 17 inches. Here, you're done, and for a little while you're done. Come here. All right, so the first thing we'll do is we'll cut an 1.25 inch wide strip here, and I'm using skirting leather.
How many ounces?
This particular one is 12 ounces, but we're gonna split it down. That's too heavy because we're also lining this. We'll go over here to the splitter, and we'll make this finish. I want to finish this at about 8 ounces. All right, so this is my splitter. I get a lot of mileage out of this, converting, what would be too heavy, a piece of leather, to something that I can use for a project. So I adjust this by feel and look. So I'll start with an end that I don't need and just give myself a rough idea of how thick that is and decide. See that, split that down. So that's just a little heavy. That's about 10 ounces. So that'll be pretty good. So now just push that lever forward, and then you end up with the weight you need. It's perfectly level, ready to go. All right, so I've got several patterns that I've made for different size dog collars. This is the one that we'll use for her. So we'll take this body here. Let's just get a tracing of this shape here. All right, so now we'll do the final shape of it. And this is an 1 inch wide rule here. And then I can use that to cut both sides of this. So there's the basic shape. And I'll take this to the grinder and I'll smooth these edges out to make sure everything's lined up. And then I'll case it, get it wet. We'll lay out the tooling pattern. On this one, we're gonna do some filigree. And we'll have color showing through it, so that'll be kind of cool. So now over to the sink, and on a project like this, it doesn't take a whole lot of getting wet, so I'll just literally just get it soaked, and then we'll let this sit for a few minutes, and then it'll be ready.
Warm water.
Warm water. That's always the best. All right, these are filigree punches. They come in all kinds of shapes. The basic ones, a lot of the card suits, that kind of stuff. This is a star. This is a heart. They will actually punch the leather out, so you end up with a hole in the leather, and we'll show you here how it works. I'll use this a lot of times on, I like these on chaps. Mm-hmm. So let me show you. So like that, and then we'll go every other one. And then the same thing with the heart, so we have the point down. Right, you got those shapes cut out of the leather. And then what we'll do is we'll back it with a contrasting color, and then you end up with that effect. All right, let's talk about leather. Most of what you see here is what they call garment leather, which means it's chrome tanned. And then some of the leathers will go one step further, and they'll chrome tan it, and then they'll oil it, and you'll get this pull-up effect. And it'll have an oil content to it. So that's called oil tan, but it's actually just chrome tan with oil. These are latigos. All of these are latigos, which is a double tannage. Latigo is tanned, veg tan first, and then chrome tan, so it has that extra strength to it. And I use this a lot for my strings, anytime I'm doing lacing, saddle strings, and then the heavier weights we'll use for tie straps on a saddle. Various weights. You can see this is a really glovey garment. This is about 3 ounces, 2 to 3 ounce leather. I use this a lot for show chaps and stuff. And then for the heavier stuff, you've got leather of this thickness, which is 5 or 6 ounce. Most of this stuff is dyed all the way through. Some of it has a top coat. like this leather here has been dyed first, and then they'll actually go in and they will put a finish on top, and you can see that shiny. And this is what you'll find in most of your upholstery leather. That's what this was originally, is upholstery leather, chairs and stuff. And that's true for all of this. But it makes neat bags, and so I use it a lot for that kind of thing. We'll use this on the dog collar, and this will be the contrasting color underneath the filigree. This is what you call suede. So where this comes from, let me just give you an example. All of this leather starts out 14 ounce from a cowhide. And what they'll do is they'll run this through a splitter.
A giant version of this.
Giant splitter, yep. And they will split this leather into several pieces. And you've got top grain, which is what this is. And then what comes out of that is the suede. And then they'll get 2 or 3 splits out of the suede. So each time they split it, it's a little smaller hide, but then they tan that too. So you might get 4 or 5 skins out of one cowhide. That's how thick it is. So it's a pretty cool process. And the suede makes great liners. I use it a lot for contrasting trim on chaps. I line gun belts with, or the belt part of gun belts with it. One of the things up here on this shelf is what's called a plate. And this is a beaver plate. You can see the sections sewn. I got this from a customer who had this idea. He wanted me to make him a pair of chaps out of it, woolies. And unfortunately, that gentleman passed away, and he never got a chance to finish that idea. So why don't you put down in the comments what would be a good use for this beaver plume? There's 2 of them.
Ooh. All right. Wow. That is absolutely
So the problem is, and the reason that this won't work for chaps is because you've got the hair direction going this way, right? So it's not tall enough to cover a leg.
Sure.
Yeah. It can't go this way.
They'll just catch every single drop of water.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's vertical, so a bag.
So chaps are out.
Chaps are out. So don't put chaps down. That's not an option.
But the best comment, the one we like, we might just make a video on us making whatever that project is. 'Cause that'd be pretty cool. I wish you guys could feel this. I mean, seriously, it is absolutely amazing.
Super sleek, elegant. Yep. All right, so here's our collar blank, just about ready to start stamping. But what I'll do is I'll trim the end off, and I'll get the buckle slot cut and stamp my logo on there, and then we can get it edged, and by then it should be ready for the filigree and the edge stamping. Nice crisp end. Skive this back. So you get a nice smooth, so when that folds over and then I line this, that transition is nice and smooth, and it's not a lump to dig on the neck. Had a customer ask about sharpening, so this is what I use. This sharpening plate, these numbers here correspond with the number that's on your blade. This is Horseshoe brand tools. I like these because you can use them up. Once they're used up, you just pull that out and get another one. I use 1200 grit sandpaper, corresponding number, it's a 2, and I'll just take this and just strop it a couple times across and then it's ready to start edging. And then you just, I do this before, on every project, I do this before I start tooling or anything, is I get that first edge cut, because that's the edge that everything's guided to, all the stamping and everything. And then this is going to be the buckle, where the buckle goes, so I'm going to edge where the buckle sits. And the lead ring will go in there too.
You want to talk about the reason that you aren't edging the backside because of the lining?
Oh yeah. Because I'm lining this with garment leather, I want these 2 edges, the garment leather and this leather, to marry, so that when I edge the garment leather after it's sewn together, you'll get a nice full round edge to both pieces, instead of, if I beveled this, then you'd have you'd have a
gap
little
in the middle.
gap, a little depression. Yeah. All right, so I use a number 5. This is my stitched groover, and just general edger
Beater.
or beater, correct? Beater.
I'm the nomenclature guy.
Yeah. I just do the work, and he keeps my.
I just critique you.
Yeah, he keeps me on the straight and narrow.
Now that we got an audience that has Google at the ready, they're
yeah, that's right.
they're on us.
That's right. Pay attention to what you call stuff, man. All right, so this is Cocobolo. I think this is Cocobolo. Anyway,
I'm sure someone will correct
It's a
us.
polisher. It might be rosewood. This is Cocobolo. This stuff right here.
Yeah.
That's Cocobolo. Anyway, it makes a good polisher. So what you're doing here, when you do this polishing, you're compressing the grain. You're compressing the leather grain down. It does change how it takes oil. It changes how it takes dye when you compress the grain. So you have to kind of be aware of that throughout a project. So places that you don't do that will stain differently than places that you do. I generally avoid doing that on saddles. I want it to just be open grain so it takes oil and stuff. Okay, so now the next step is we'll lay out our filigree pattern and our stamping pattern. So we'll run this little fleur-de-lis stamp along here on both sides, and then with the space that's left, we'll divide that up and we'll cut out our filigrees. Okay, and this is 3/4 of an inch. And this is where we'll stamp. We'll cut our filigree shapes. This is the other thing I use a lot. This is just plastic, but it's a burnisher, an old burnisher from when I was a graphic designer. But it's got a really nice shape to it, and so I can drag it across and rub out lines, unwanteds, and then I just have those marks. And we'll come back here with the heart. Go back here. And then what you want to make sure happens, so you can see with this one right here, it didn't cut through all the fibers. See how it's kind of filled in? Mm-hmm. So you need to make sure that you get all of that cleaned out of there so it's nice and clean. And so I'll double check them all, make sure they all came out good. All right, so now we'll put down our border stamp. Got this all stamped, and now it's dry and ready for top coating. We'll do a layer of this, and then we will antique it, and then we'll finish it. So just apply this nice and even, and then I go over it with a damp sponge.
Even it out.
Even it out. Now see how dark? How the leather is one even dark color. That's what you're chasing. So now it'll dry back the same without streaks. It took me a lot of projects to figure that one out. Okay, we'll let this set up. We will take this with us and we'll go in here and cut the liner for it. Okay, now we're going to set up our lining leather. What I've chosen to use here is, this is actually bison, which is kind of cool. Okay, so you want to top coat this leather so it seals the grain. So when I put this antiquing on, it stays in the low spots, but you can buff it off of the high spots.
And it doesn't go down into the pores of the leather.
Right, and it doesn't change the color a lot. It does a little bit, and you'll see. When we put this on here, you'll see it changes the color a little bit. But we'll buff it off the high spots, and then you get that nice two-tone contrasty look. Now what I want to try to do is get some of this antiquing down into those shapes so that the edges are dark, and then I'll clean them out And then take your
Flat palm.
flat palm. Move it around a lot. Make sure you got a clean towel. I'll take this stylus and I'll go in here and I'll clean out these, rub these shapes and get that antiquing on the inside edge of that shape so that it has a good contrasting window, you know what I mean? We'll glue this piece of orange underneath here. We just want to make sure it's the right length to cover up all the holes. From there to there. And then I want to make sure that I make it narrow enough that it doesn't get in the way with this sewing. And then we'll go skive these edges down and glue it in place. I'm going to skive this edge down so that after it's lined, this is a nice smooth transition. You don't have any bulk. Take our trusty glue. Wow. Negatives right there. Oops. And we will carefully lay this on either side of our pattern there.
Nice. That's sweet.
Okay, and so we'll let that set up for a second, and then while we're doing that, let me show you the buckles. So I'm using an antique copper, and that'll look nice with that orange.
Yeah.
So the first thing it gets the lead ring, and then the buckle. First things first, we got to edge this part because we can't get to it after we've sewn it. We'll give it our wax here. And we'll take it over to the trusty buffer. Polish these edges really good. And the other thing about polishing the edges is it seals them. So that it does help reduce moisture from getting into the leather through the edge. So that's part of why it looks nice, but it also seals it. Lays down the grain. So I got this liner glued on, the buckle's in place and sewn in. There's the lead loop. And we'll sew this up, get it edged, get a couple holes punched, and see how it fits the dog. All right, so I'm putting on a wider foot so that when I sew this, it doesn't mar the pattern. This narrow presser foot here puts a little line. You can see the differences. You can see the difference in the width of those feet. So this spreads it out a lot more.
Wow. I can tell that buffalo is tough.
Yeah, it makes really good lining leather because it's got a lot of tensile strength.
Yeah.
So it resists.
I mean, that's really tough.
Yeah, you can hear it.
Yeah.
Make good gloves.
No kidding.
Good moccasins too. Just truing up the edge here. This is 220 grit sandpaper. I like to sand the edges with. All right, so Pippi was a 16.5, 17. So we'll punch a hole there, and we'll punch one at 18, and we'll punch one at 16. I do all kinds of different dog collars for folks. Some of them have names, conchos, spots. Go to the website and you can see several different examples of dog collars that I've made for people. Good girl, come here. You're getting up here. Ready? Ready? Oh, you had to go swimming. Jeez. Let's see how this looks. Oh, looks like it fits perfect.
Nice. Got the hunter orange in there for our hunting dog, who's terrified of guns. She's still a hunting dog, though.
All right, if you like this video, check out our other videos on the channel, and thanks for watching.